Good morning and hello, Internet. Maybe good afternoon if you're on the other coast or maybe in Europe. I'm Chase Jarvis, founder and CEO of Creative Live, lifelong creator and entrepreneur, and I could not be more excited to welcome you to the Creative Calling Book Club here at Creative Live. Um, I'm just over the moon to have you join the broadcast today. I'm coming at you live from a remote location, as probably you've seen in your feeds over the course of the past, I don't know, 12 or 14 weeks. I'm excited you're here. The goal for this is to last between 30 and 60 minutes. I've got a program that I want to present to you. We'll have some Q&A throughout. If you're just now joining us on Facebook Live or YouTube Live, maybe Creative Live TV, feel free to go to the actual class page of this course at creativelive.com/book club, or go to creativelive.com/TV and you can participate in the chat. That is where I see your live questions. All you have to do is click join chat in the upper right hand corner, and then I will see that in real time. If you want to stay on your preferred platform, maybe Facebook or YouTube Live, I will get those questions just a little bit delayed. So I wanted to start off our conversation today. Again, this is a really important moment because we need creativity now more than ever. That's the reason for us kicking off this book club. I found myself drifting in and out of my creative practice over the past, I would say, 12 weeks. And so many of us in the community, I was getting a lot of messages from you all. And it just occurred to us that this was a really important time for creativity, whether you're looking to escape, whether you're looking to lay some plans, whether you want to create a project or plans for the rest of your life. If you recognized from this moment that we are all in together that this is a huge opportunity and I want to reinvent or create a new living or life for myself in the next chapter, now is the time. So that was the impetus behind the class. And I wanted to start off today's broadcast with a story. And I've told this in many different ways and shapes and different pieces, but I want to line it up together for you to understand this moment that we're in and why creativity is so powerful. Also, maybe why you're stuck, why you feel incomplete, and why you showed up today, which I have to give you a lot of credit for. It goes back to the summer between first and second grade. I was either 7 or 8, depending on my birthday's in July. So I don't remember if it was before or after July, but I was either 7 or 8. And my friends and I had decided to make a film, and we washed cars in our neighborhood in order to finance the film. We raised some money over the course of a few weeks, and we hired my buddy's brother. We hired him for $1 to film the project, and we bought film, Super 8 film, with some of the money. My friend Quinn, his father had a Super 8 camera. And over the course of just maybe a week or 10 days, we wrote out a script, we rehearsed, and we recorded all in camera my first film. It was called The Sons of Zorro. Had just seen a movie called The Son of Zorro, which no relation, of course, very, very different film. It was a direct ripoff. And we pasted flyers all over the neighborhood in order to get people to show up. We went to the store. I remember literally picking out what candy bars that we would sell. And we bought the candy bars for, I think, 25 cents and sold them for 50 cents. Over the course of the next, I don't know, week of promotion, we screened the film and we made a profit. And I remember in that moment thinking, maybe I could just do this over and over. Now, for those of you listening, this is something from my past, and obviously I bet you did things like this in your past, and you're saying, wait a minute, that was however many years ago. The same words that we said to ourselves, those were creative and inspirational embedded moments that whether we know it or not, we've carried forward. As an example, that little moment in that summer between first and second grade, it carried into my second grade year. I remember I opened up the second grade, the first week of school, I did a magic show. I had card tricks. I had all kinds of, I saw myself as a really creative person. And then at the beginning of right before the holiday break, there's a parent teacher check-in, and it was attached to the ice cream social. So all the kids are in the gym having ice cream, and there's parents meeting with different teachers. I stumbled into this second grade classroom, Miss Kelly, and I overheard her tell my parents that I was so much better at sports than at art. And now coming off my profitable film in the summertime and all of, my magic shows and my stand-up comedy act that I'd been developing, again, these are all things that we do as second graders. And then I heard an adult that I respected and admired and appreciated tell my parents that I wasn't that good at art. And most people would be crushed, I think, or now rather looking back, we would say, oh, that poor little second grader was crushed. But that's not true. I just said, oh, I'm not good at art. Okay, great. I'm going to do the thing that culture thinks is good for me or that I'm good at, and not what interests me or where I have areas of passion. And it just turns out that seed, it sent me on a nearly 20-year, let's call it 15-year, 12-year journey away from the things that I was very passionate about. And I did pursue sports. So my second grade teacher wasn't wrong. I was a good athlete, but at what cost? And so wherever you are right now, this is where you're at. And I don't want you to beat yourself up. I want you to recognize that whether you're stuck in the small s stuck or stuck in the capital S stuck, or maybe you're not stuck, you're just here for inspiration. My hope over the course of the next 6 weeks, and as we walk through Creative Calling, is to help you understand that A, it's okay to be in the position you're in right now. B, it's exactly what you need, in fact. And C, that we can together through this program get you unstuck, reverse some of these messages and the natural state that you've, I guess, gravitated toward because of all these social influences and cultural influences on why you are where you are right now. So, opening little salvo, don't sweat it. Wherever you are right now, we can get you fixed, unstuck, and back on a creative path. And when I say creativity, I mean creativity in all senses of the word. Creativity with a small c, like art and design and any individual product or practice or program or project that you're working on. And I also mean creativity with a capital C, which is the concept of creating everything in your life. You are a creative force. So I want to start off the next little segment of today's broadcast with a reading. And if you paid attention to the class page, what we wanted to talk about today is just the first two. They're sort of pre-chapters. It's called Read This First and Introduction. If you don't have the book or you haven't read these two things, it's only 19 pages. I don't want you to worry about it. If you have read them, then you are aware that we're just really setting up the problem and helping us understand where we're going to go over the course of the next 6 weeks, and in turn, the arc of the book. It is a process. It is a 4-step process that will get you unstuck, get you on the right path, and unlock your creativity and, by extension, your human potential. So I'm also, if you're tuning in right now, I would love to make this interactive before I start this read, and let me know where you're tuning in from. I will be taking questions. I'll pause at a couple moments, and then we'll really attack questions at the end of sort of my presentation. But just as a heartbeat check, I would love to see where you're coming in from. Oh, what's going on here? I need to turn that off. Just let me know where you're tuning in from. And as you're listening to the program and to the reading and some of the exercises that I want to share, some of the questions, I do want you to respond. This is meant to be interactive. And for those of you who are asking, I can see some questions. Yes, I will be having some guests, maybe even you, later on in the 6-week process. So if you want some one-on-one coaching, this is the place. We will do it, and we will learn by example, because what we find in creativity, as in so many other things, is there's only a handful of problems. We're stuck for a handful of reasons, and I've narrowed those down. And a problem that someone in in Western France has is probably the same problem that you may be having there in New Jersey or in Sacramento or wherever you're listening to. So we are all in this together and we can learn. I love seeing Alberta, Canada, James in Victoria, Lester in Mississippi, Richmond, Virginia, Andy. I want to know where you're at, Andy. Helen Reed, nice to see you. Loka is in Kuwait, Pakistan, Northern California. Thank you so much. We truly have a worldwide audience, and that is part of what makes this broadcast and this community so special. All right, I want to begin the actual lesson here with a reading, and it goes a little bit like this. Ask yourself, is the way you're working working? Is the way you're living working? This is a book about creativity, but in a larger sense, it's about life and how you live it. It's not just about starting a creative practice or becoming a better designer, writer, photographer, or entrepreneur, although this book will supercharge all of those skills. This is about living a richer, deeper, more rewarding life than ever before. Embracing creativity in your life is like that moment when Dorothy steps out of her black and white Kansas house into blazing Technicolor Munchkin land. um, I've had a lot of people ask me about that line, and this idea of creativity providing vibrancy, not just to the project that you're working on, but to the entire scope of your life, is a very, very meaningful takeaway. And it's a great reminder as we start this journey together how important it is. So many of us in our early years were taught that creativity is art. Well, remember that art is just a subset of creativity. It's a great subset. It's a great manifestation of creativity. But creativity, as I mentioned earlier, with a capital C, that's what we are really on a journey to discover. And we're going to get to the three steps, the three main pillars of the book in just a second. But I wanted to ask a question now, and I would love to see in the comments, if you are willing to type a few keystrokes here, what is it you're seeking? If you listen to that read, is the way you're working working? Is the way you're living working? And the next line that I didn't read is you picked up this book for a reason, and I want you, or by extension, you're in this class for a reason. So I want to know, what is it that you are seeking? Put that in the comments right now. I'll see those as you share it. But it's a very fundamental yet super easy question to gloss over, because so many of us, we want creativity because it sounds good, or we want creativity because it's something we lost. I don't care what it is. I just want you to be really specific. That way, if I know what you're here seeking, I can better deliver that result over the course of the next 6 weeks. And together, again, I believe that all the answers, the last, I would say 25 years of my life are embedded in the book. But I'm going to help you float up the answers to your biggest questions so that we can actually address what it is you're seeking. Now, many of you tuned into my conversation yesterday with Angela Duckworth, who wrote the book Grit. She's a psychologist, and she's done a ton of research around the qualities that people who create success for themselves have. And the number one thread that she found through all that wasn't about background or socioeconomic status, or whether their parents were creative or not, or their parents were entrepreneurs, or whether they said nice things or poor things as a kid. It was about one quality called grit, and that's a combination of passion and perseverance. Now, the perseverance part, it turns out, is huge. But what my takeaway from my conversation with Angela was this: that the more specific you can be about what it is you're seeking, the more likely you are going to be able to unlock it. So that is why I wanted to open the conversation today with you being really clear. And I asked you to bring a notebook and paper, and maybe you're on the bus or commuting, or maybe you're holed up and you don't have access to a notebook. That's fine. But I want you to note in whatever way you can, ideally in a journal. It doesn't have to be perfect. Write down 10 things you might be seeking: peace of mind, better sleep, a next chapter in my career. You want to get your first novel done. I just want you to be very aware of this, because the best outcomes in life are created. Now, that is a thing also that so many people, we even have a common parlance in English is, oh, did he or she or they find success? Success isn't found, success is created. So I'm asking you to be specific. And again, I'm seeing the chat room light up right here. And I appreciate Laura. Lauren says she struggled making photography financially successful. She let go of it because of that and stopped shooting. Jody loves to write and promised herself that at 18 that she would write a book. 20 years later, she's written a lot of words, but not a book. These are classic examples of us putting off our dreams and letting culture, go back to my opening story with Miss Kelly in my second grade, letting culture tell us why creativity is or isn't valuable, or that our goals are or aren't reasonable or unreasonable. Alicia says, I'm working in a digital agency, but still growing creativity inside herself so she can be the best version of herself. To me, this is a really important moment for us to understand why we're here. So, in order to tackle topic one, whatever you wrote down, and feel free to keep taking notes there. And this isn't, you don't just have the 2 minutes to write down everything and to lock it in. Over the course of the next week, before we go into the first part of the book, feel free to adapt and change and tweak over the next week what it is that you're actually seeking, because it's with time and with a lot of energy that you come to truly understand this stuff. So don't feel too much pressure to get it all down right now and move on. But let's say you've got something, some idea, and I want you to get more specific over time, but if you've got some idea that you wrote down in your notebook there or scribbled it on the notebook of your mind, I think that's a really key point, that you have to understand 3 things if you believe that you can deliver on what it is that you're seeking. 1, that we're all creative. Every single person who's tuning in here, I know for a fact, having surveyed thousands of people in the Creative Life program and stood up in front of, audiences as large as 10,000 in stadiums and asked people to put their hand up who identify as creators, and it's shockingly low. So, of course, since you're here, most of you have bought the book or are subscribed to Creative Live, so I think you probably identify as creators, but it's my hope that there are a bunch of people who maybe don't, and they're here, they're tucked away in a closet in their house with headphones on watching right now to be a part of the community. I call these people creative curious, and you're welcome here too. You don't have to have this big identity or a cape that says I'm a super creator. Wherever you are on the spectrum, that's where you are. But the number one thing that you have to believe in order to make that thing that you're seeking, that we just talked about, come true, is that you have to identify as a creator. You have to say that I create my future, that I have agency over my life. So, the lightweight proof that we are all creative can be seen in so many ways. I say regularly, and you've probably heard me say this, just walk into any first grade classroom and say, who wants to come up to the front of the room and draw me a picture? How many hands go up? Every hand goes up. So just that little empirical example that we've all experienced, or you watch a child play with the toys, or it's obvious how creative we are. And yet we often sort of ignore that. So if you can, however, acknowledge that you're creative, that's the first step in being able to identify and connect with what it is you're seeking. The second is that you have to believe that creativity is a muscle. It is a muscle, and like any other muscle, you have to use it in order to gain strength. Maya Angelou said it best: creativity is an infinite resource. The more you use, the more you have. So if you believe, 1, that everyone's creative, and I think that's self-evident. If you believe thing 2, that creativity is a muscle, like anything else, any other habit in the world, any other process that you go through, the more you do it, the better you get. I don't think this is a stretch. And then thing 3 is that it's through doing small creative acts, being aware of your creative faculties and identifying as a creator. Again, knowing that you are creative. It's in creating in small daily ways through a project, through a meal, through just knowing that right now, for example, we're co-creating this experience. You could ask a question, I could answer it, and it could completely change the trajectory of our program today. We're co-creating this. So if you understand and believe that you can create in small daily ways, that you have agency over that, that this is the mechanism for changing your life, for creating the next chapter, the next product, the next project. Ultimately, we want to all be in control of our lives. We want to write our own script, and we know that if we wait around for a script to be written for us, people will gladly write it. And that's what you see with your career counselors and your parents and your friends, who are all eager to give you advice on what you should do with this one precious life. But you are in charge of creating it. And it's only through creating in small ways that you understand that you can create your life with the capital L. It's just creativity at a different scale. So quick recap. 1, you have to identify your creative. 2, creativity is a muscle. 3, it's by creating a creative habit, by creating in small ways, regularly, every day, ideally. It's in doing that that you realize that you can architect the arc of your life. Now, in order to facilitate that, I'm going to pause right now and see if there are any questions about this. I want to go into what we're going to talk about over the next 5 weeks after today, this framework that I developed, if you're familiar with the book, the idea framework. But before we do, I want to see if there are some questions and say thank you so much for participating. There's, I think, more than 2,000 of you tuned in, registered for the class, and I know we're broadcasting on a couple of other platforms like Facebook and YouTube Live. So give us a shout out here. I'm looking at some comments. Malvis 100 wants more creativity in his or their life. Mervin says he's seeking to make a living while doing what he loves in a country that makes it hard to do it full time as a creative. I understand. We're going to fix and find and put a path together for you to achieve those things, Mervin, just so you know. All right, so let's see. Any other questions? I'm going to click over to my, it's so fun to be doing this all, again, super small team at Creative Live broadcasting this. I want to give a shout out to Nasa and Adam and the team for pulling this together. I think we got Joe and a handful of others operating the broadcast booth. Checking into chat here. Jane, used to be more creative than you are now. How does one narrow down the focus when you have so many ideas? We're going to get to that. Gautam says, yo, Mel, how do you continue the joy in your creativity without making it into a job? I think this is fascinating, and I'm going to get to a little piece of that in a second, which is a way to understand what kind of a creator you are. It's really helpful. That's in this first section of the book. Matt Queen, what's up, Matt? Nice to see you. Fergus is seeking creative courage. Oh, another chap, or I know a few females named Chase. So he, she, or they named Chase. What's the thing that you do every day that's pushed me to another level? All right, these are all questions that we will get to specifically at the end of the broadcast, but it's good to know what you're thinking about. Caitlin, yep, everything seems to be working from the team's perspective. I just had them check in, but you can go to creativelive.com/TV or the Facebook page if for some reason your feed is interrupted. Okay, so let me shift gears here and introduce the framework. Now, this is a framework that I developed over the course of identifying all my biggest successes and my biggest failures. And it's also something I understood after having people like Sir Richard Branson, Brene Brown, Ariane Huffington, Arlen Hamilton, Tim Ferriss, Gary Vee, Angela Duckworth, for example, on the Creative Life platform or on my personal podcast, deconstructing their successes and failures as well. I was able to understand that there is a process that we all run, and it became clear through my research that the times that we created the success that we sought, a certain set of of conditions were in play. And by contrast, when we whiffed or dropped the ball or missed the mark, that some element of this process, the idea process that I wrote about in Creative Calling, was absent. And so that is a way that helps me then, this through research, understand that it is a creative process for any project that you have, whether it's a presentation at work, or in the case of the student who's tuned in today who was wanting to write a book. This is the process that you need to go through, and it's called IDEA, IDEA. It's an acronym, and it stands for these four things. First, imagine what it is you want. And when I say imagine, I do not mean what your parents told you, what your career counselor told you, what your spouse or your partner told you was possible. I want you to imagine that if you could, snap your fingers and have it appear before you out of thin air, that's the kind of imagination that I would love to have you enable and unlock through this process. First step is imagine what you want. Again, whether it's a project at work, whether it's that novel, or imagine what you want for your life. The second step, the D in IDEA, is great. We know what we want. Now we're going to design a system for doing that. And what do I mean by designing a system? Usually it's just a system of behaviors that line up with the goals that we have. This was really clear in the research, really clear in my own experience. If I don't have a clear goal and I don't have a plan to get there, it's very, very hard for one to arrive where they want to be. So we're going to design a framework for you to achieve the thing that you imagined under the I. So imagine, D is for design. E, we're going to execute against that plan. And this is the tough part that most people get stuck around executing this vision, because they get tired or they get distracted or they've got a mortgage, and there's all kinds of excuses and reasons that we share for not completing this vision. But I just have to remind you, we have one precious life, one go. And how important should it be for you to maximize and fulfill that in a way that lifts you up and brings you joy? You've seen people and you have felt what it feels like. That is available to you, but you have to execute. IDE for execute. And the last one is amplify, A. Now, if you're familiar with the book right now, you may be saying, yeah, this is old hat, Chase. Read the book, maybe read it twice, listened to it on audio. And I appreciate the setup, but when we're going to get to the meat, I'm here to tell you that this is the meat. How many free throws has Michael Jordan shot? Right? That the meat, that's the fundamentals. And I'm betting that right now there's a gap between where you are and where you want to be. And that's the reason you tuned in and you've read the book. You said, yeah, great, I got the system, Chase, but are you implementing it? All right. I would say that you're just not aware of it. And one of the reasons I know you're kind of implementing it is because you're here. And when I say here, this means you're a part of this community. Today, what we're doing together right this minute is being a part of a community. And that is key to that last stage, the A in amplify. Amplify is a signifier for community. We need to amplify our ideas, amplify the way we see the world, map that vision out onto the world, and get feedback from the world, connect with others so that they can help us in this journey to create whatever it is that we imagined back in the first step. So again, IDEA. Now, if you're saying, okay, I get this, but I'm stuck, I'm banking that you're stuck in one of two ways. I'm banking that you are stuck because you are in one of two camps. A, you are in the camp of imagining something and then, okay, I'm going to make a plan, and you buy a bunch of supplies, and then comes time for the executing, and then you go back to another dream, a different dream, slightly different. That means you need to buy a different camera, or you need to buy some more supplies, or you need to design a different set of goals. And then as soon as it gets time to do it, you're okay. So you're just stuck in this ID. What does that feel like? That is, ideating and designing a plan without executing is not going to get you anywhere, right? This is what part of us what is a large part that makes many of us feel stuck. Let's go to the other side of the coin, which is someone might be executing like crazy, but if you haven't said where you want to go, if you haven't imagined what's possible with this one precious life or with this project, and you haven't designed a plan, and you're just you're busy, but you're not getting anywhere, you're not alone. I mean, the way I like to think about it is being busy isn't a virtue. It's a sign of a lack of direction, right? It's not clear priorities. A hamster on a wheel is busy, but if you haven't done the first two steps, like ideating and then or imagining and then designing a plan, and you're executing, you're just doing stuff to make you feel good because you can chalk it up as like, oh, I'm taking pictures. Great. But if you want to be a pro, like someone in the comments who was just talking about, I want to make a living. Have you taken the next several steps in that process, like getting a business license, like trying to understand who your customer is, trying to get your images in front of those customers, right? That is like so key to becoming a photographer that most people ignore, and they'll just be busy. So if you're in this concept of executing either just randomly, or maybe you work at a company, you're executing other people's ideas, you're helping them manifest their vision rather than you manifest yours. That's another really, really, and even you might even be amplifying it, right? You might be doing the A step. But what is needed, and where most people fall short, is this whole system, the fact of just walking through these 4 steps. That's why they're called steps in the book, because you need to do step 1, then step 2, then step 3, and then step 4. Now, of course, you're going to retrace your steps back to areas when you get stuck or you need more clarity, and that's natural, right? Not everything is a linear up and to the right graph that we would like. But I want you to understand how critical the idea framework is. This is where, I mean, as a creator, when you identify as a creator, you're no longer just this cork bobbing in the tide. You have agency over your life. You recognize it. And recognizing our problems or where we're stuck, that's half of the problem. Many of you are aware of meditation or mindfulness. What that is, that's the act of watching thoughts go by and acknowledging them and then letting them go on by. That's the same thing that I want you to do with acknowledging you're stuck. Let's not over index on it and go down the rabbit hole of how stuck or broken or tired or screwed up or bad you are. And let's just acknowledge that we're stuck and then get back to the creating part, creating the solution, which is why I think you're here. This is, again, your sort of basis for personal power. I like to think of it as having 2 jobs in this world, right? Job 1 is to find out what you're supposed to be doing with this one precious life, and then 2, do that thing. And the biggest lie, the huge lie that so many of us accept, is that this process of going after what we want is too risky, is maybe selfish or unwise. And I've always understood that, not always, I have come to understand rather the value of creativity. If you look around you, like, okay, let's see, how about the people who I respect and admire, whether it's my neighbor or someone on the internet or Chase Jarvis or Richard Branson or Arlen Hamilton? That was designed. They followed this process. And the reason that you respect, appreciate, admire, look up to them, probably some subset of that is their values, but also what they've done with this one precious life. Not what they've thought, not when they've sat on the couch and thought about how great their life or the life that they can provide for others would be, because they've done something, right? And you have to understand that those people, whether or not they manage through the trauma, the hardships, the tough part that you find yourself in right now or not, doesn't matter. What matters is this idea that you matter and that what it is that you want to do with this one precious life, that should be paramount. And right now you're saying, I've got kids, I've got a mortgage. These are totally common. I completely understand them. What I'm here to tell you today is that you do not have to sacrifice those things in order to create the living and the life that you want for yourself. That is a myth that those things are separate or divergent. but you do have to develop some skills, some communication skills, some awareness, again, just awareness of where you are in the process, that the situation that you're in is not serving you and that you can change it. Remember, you need to believe that your situation is changeable. Now, it's also never clear to me what people who say that, oh, you shouldn't be a fill in the blank, whether it's a novelist or a photographer or an entrepreneur or whatever it is that you want to be, a mom, that what you're supposed to be instead of those things, like somehow being a doctor or a lawyer, or these are things that are commonly programmed, at least in the US, as sort of success. It's never clear what you're supposed to do besides the thing that you want to do. And people say, oh, no, you wouldn't dare do that because, and they give you a long list. Or this toxic myth of the starving artist, that's completely gotten in our culture and it's super toxic. And what we're going to do is we're going to clean that up. So also being able to call out where you're stuck or why, or where in that process you might be falling down. It's also important to identify how you see yourself. Do you see yourself? What page is that? I think that is, let me just get a second here. It's page 15 in the book. I do not know, unfortunately, what it is in a Kindle. But there's just 4 bullets around ambitious pro, stuck creator, developing hobbyist, or creative curious. The ambitious pro is someone who identifies as a serious creator, even if your work isn't the primary source of your income. A stuck creator is you want to make work, but you're not getting anywhere. You're open to creative awakening, but you're unsure how to light the fire. Developing hobbyist is you're content with sticking with that day job that pays for your creative passions, but you want to get better. You want to increase your skills. And the creative curious is you do not think of yourself as a creative, but part of you wants to explore this idea. Now, one of the reasons I like, this is another thing you can be taking notes on in your notebook as you're following along, is I think it's important, in the same breath as I mentioned earlier about being aware of something as part of the solution, just being real with how you see yourself is an important part of the process. What are your special gifts? I think this is a really neat thing. Part of the challenge with creative calling is I'm trying to solve for 2 things in the book. And the 2 things that I'm trying to solve for are both how to live your dreams and then how to identify what those dreams are. And I've found in so many other books about creativity or about a life well lived, you get either one or the other. And so, essentially this is sort of 2 books in one. And I think understanding, there's so many people I saw in the comments yesterday when I was with Angela Duckworth, that so many people are like, I don't know how to identify the thing that I'm supposed to be doing, but I don't like what I'm doing right now. One of the ways that I like to attack that problem, for those of you who have it, is what are you good at? What do you enjoy? And you should be making a list. Again, you don't have to do all the list making and all the scribbling in your notebook right now. It may be helpful or it may be distracting, but I invite you to go back to it as soon as you can, which is, what are you good at? And if you're not sure what you're good at, ask some friends. Hey, I'm finding myself stuck right now and I want to do things that I'm good at and I'm not quite sure. What do you think I'm good at? These are great questions to invoke for partners and friends and spouses and peers, people you work with, workmates, and this overlapping Venn diagram of what you're really good at and what you care about. This is sort of the passion part of Angela Duckworth's work. That tends to be a good place to start. What are you curious about? If you look back in your history, what lit you up? At what time did you feel great? Because that's the cool thing about life, is that we've all found glimpses of what it feels like to be living in authenticity, to be doing what we're supposed to be doing with the people that we want. And if you look back and look at those, even if it was just a season in your life or a summer or one particular job that you feel this fondness towards, that is a great place to start to explore. And for those of you who don't know what your thing is, I encourage you to taste and sample a lot of things. And you can't sample from sitting on the couch, right? You can't sample in your mind. You have to actually go do the thing. And the cool thing about creativity in this process is that while even if you turn your back on something in 3 months, 3 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever, no effort is ever wasted. That was valuable. You learned something, you learned a skill, you learned something about yourself that you can always use going forward. So skip the idea or refuse the idea that time has been wasted. If you remember my story at all from the book or anything you found online, I pursued the things that everybody else wanted for me, from that second grade moment through graduating from college. And I was, even into graduate school, honestly, I was $100,000 in debt, 100 grand. And I had felt that, oh my gosh, now when I've suddenly awoke to the trauma of doing everything that everybody else wanted rather than the thing that I wanted, and I was 100 grand in debt, and I felt 10 or 12 or 15 years off, that I'd lit those years on fire. To this day, I still realize that that was part of my process and something I had to go through. So if you are a person who is stuck, or you're creative curious, for example, and you don't know, don't sweat it, but you have to start experimenting. And for those of you who know what you want to do, you know how you see yourself, maybe it's an ambitious pro or you're stuck, understanding that you're stuck and then accepting that there's creativity within you. And these are the following things on the list, the things that we're going to do over the course of the next 6 weeks that you want to change. That is going to be key. And so is honesty. Right now, if you're worried that someone's going to read your notes and your partner or your spouse, you might have a really secure job as I don't know, in banking or in an office job that is not going to go away in this time. And the last thing you want to do is take a risk. I understand that. But this is part of when I say we've lost our ability to imagine. The first step that we're going to cover next week is you have to be able to be real with yourself. And that's why just jotting notes vigorously, asking others, and really doing an internal search is so, so valuable. All right. So we're 40 minutes into the conversation here. I wanted to press pause for just a second and look back into the comments and answer a few questions before we go to where I'm going to answer like 30 or 40 in a row. I just want to check in and see how y'all are doing. Caitlin, you've been worried about people finding your notes and that what you really want to be. You're not alone. Don't worry about it. Chris, I'm excited that you're looking forward to it. So many great comments. Nicole, Isabella, Alicia, Drew, nice to see you in here, Drew. We got a question came in from IG Live, Jen, one again. Silly question, but what if you like doing so much stuff, you can see yourself doing multiple things? How do you narrow it down? Okay, this is one question I'm going to talk about right now before we go back and finish out the program and get into the official Q&A, because I think what Jen One Again on IG is asking is very important, that we feel that when we choose something, we turn our back on so many other things, and you want to keep all doors open infinity, right? Now, when I just say that, there's an obvious problem, and everyone here knows it, and that's part of the paradox, right? Is that the understanding that when you walk through a door, you've turned your back on so many others. Here's what I'd say to that. Every person that you respect, admire, look up to, appreciate for being great at something, even if that something is being a great parent or being a great supporter or being a great entrepreneur, artist, photographer, designer, whatever it is, the reason that you respect them is because they have gone deep on that thing. It is a primary focus of their effort and attention. One of the reasons I love mindfulness so much, and if many of you know that my wife Kate is a mindfulness teacher, mindfulness just has to do with where you pay attention. What are you thinking? What's the mindset that you're operating in? And where does your attention go? Because if you cannot control your attention, you are almost by definition a cork in the tide. Attention, whether it's to your kid or your profession or your family or some derivation of all those things, is the most important thing. It's the most precious thing that we have. ultimately it's a lot like time, right? You can't get it back. If you spent 10 hours thinking about that one comment that you read on your YouTube video, then that attention was on something that was doing you harm versus where you want to go and what you want to do with this one creative, precious life that you got. And in order to beat that, and in order to move forward, you have to start committing to those things. And here's the refreshing part is what you experience when you commit to something is a feeling of, instead of pushing rocks uphill, the world starts to happen for you rather than to you. And I know it sounds counterintuitive, but this anxiety that you're having right now, trying to hold all these balls up in the air at the same time. I want to be a musician and a singer and a documentary filmmaker. Great. What is your primary area of focus? And maybe that's, again, that Venn diagram. You've asked your friends and peers what it is that you're great at, but that you have to love it. This is a common theme over and over and over in the top performers in the world, that they get the most juice. And one of the reasons that they are world class is because they have a disproportionate energy for the thing. So what's counterintuitive, again, is when you commit to something, you start to see the merits of commitment. And the way I talk about it in the book much later on is in the form of mastery. Once you've mastered something, what you've developed in addition to that mastery is the awareness of what it feels like to be a master in a domain. You can look at the ingredients and realize that you can lift and stamp so many of those ingredients that you created through pursuing something with vigor and focus. Then you can easily explore other things. Look at someone like Tim Ferriss. You know, was a world-class, I think, salsa or tango champion. Obviously, he wrote the book on the 4-Hour Body, on fitness and wellness and understanding our ability to control, how our body functions and what it looks like and how well it works. You've seen him be a 5-time #1 New York Times bestselling author. You've seen him make a TV show. His podcast is one of the top 10 in the world. These are different skills that he's lifting and stamping mastery onto. So if you're hamstrung by wanting to do so many things, this is the hard part. You have to pick something. And it's in choosing that one thing. You don't only have to ever do that, but it's in choosing something that what is the most absurd thing? What is the thing that, even it might sound crazy to say it out loud, but this is truly the thing that you want to be known for, that you want to know yourself as, that you want to have your identity connected to. In choosing that thing, you will find this power, this pull. The world starts working for you rather than against you. The tractor beam starts pulling you toward the thing. And I can't tell you what this feeling's like. I do know that you felt it at some point where the moon was in line with Venus, as they say. Okay, awesome. Now, I think I want to just appreciate Jen for asking that question. One of the reasons I took that of the hundreds that I see here coming in is because it's a powerful and common one. All right, I'm going to extract for a second, fly back up to 30,000 feet and talk a little bit about what we've covered so far is the way you're working. I want you to identify in your journal and your notes, what is it that you're seeking? And it can be a list of 10 things, but I want you to start to refine those things over time and focus on them. And we're going to set some specific goals. I want you to remember that we're all born creative, that creativity is a muscle, and it's through creating a creative habit, a daily habit in small ways, cooking dinner, going home a certain new way every time you commute, all these different little creative acts. It's through doing those that you recognize and understand that you can create your life arc. We covered what we're going to cover in the next 5 weeks, the idea framework. Each session that we're going to get together and cover is going to be one of those things. So we're going to work at what does it mean to imagine something. This is a skill that we've lost. Same with D, E, and A. We recognize that your job is to find out what your gifts are and then bring them to bear. That's on page 17. And we've acknowledged where we're stuck. We've agreed that we can look out and understand who we are, where on the spectrum we fit, and what it is that we need to do to get unstuck. And So I want to do two things now. One, I want to bridge the gap to our next a next discussion by reading a piece of the book. It's just a short. It's like two paragraphs. It's on page 38, so you can go there. And then I'm going to share some reminders and then take Q&A. And we're 50 minutes in. I promise to keep this 30 to 60 minutes. So the program will end for sure by 60 minutes, but I'll probably answer some questions a little bit longer than that because I know there's so many of you and I can see them coming up. And I think that that's where a ton of value is in showing up as a community member. So we're going to get to that in just a second. But for now, I'm going to read from page 38, which is, you will know, is in the next section that we're going to talk about. And it is this. Let's see. It's time to start the gears turning and roll the possibilities around in your mind. Anything is possible. Anything. Blacksmithing, ceramics, composing music, dancing, fiber crafts, filmmaking, flower arranging, gardening, glass blowing, jewelry making, joke writing, leathercraft, coding, painting, paper crafts, photography, playing an instrument, singing, or starting a business. It's making a habit of these things that matters most. So the question isn't, where am I going to end up? The question is, where am I going to start? And that's what we're going to cover next week. Now, before we go to next week and before we go to questions, I'm going to take a second to say that if you do not have the book, again, no problem, not required. Hopefully, again, that's one of the reasons I'm doing the readings, is so that you don't have to buy the book. That said, the book is today's the last 24 hours. I got the publisher to extend it to a second week. That ends today. The book is $2.99 in the U.S. at the Amazon store, at Amazon, Apple, B&N, and all that. That's for the ebook, Kindle or whatnot. $2.99, and by extension, the hardback is $14.49. That's below 50% of the price, and the $2.99 thing, that's like what, 90% off or something. So that was something that I shared earlier this week, and as soon as COVID hit, I worked with my agent, who's amazing. I want to say thank you, Steve, to work with the publisher and the retailers to make this possible, because I know money's tight for so many people. So again, it's absolutely free, this class is, but having the book and being able to refer to it often, again, this is sort of mentorship at scale right here, which is the reason I wrote the book. So it's available for $2.99. Today is the last day that that's going to happen. So I've got confirmation that it's going to end, I think midnight Eastern, maybe midnight. I hope. All right. So that's the thing. It'd be great if you read the material in section 1, in step 1 under imagination. It's 3 chapters. It's maybe 75 pages or something like that between now and the next time. Not required, but valuable. I'm actually rereading the book in the same way that you are. So we're in this together. A third thing that I want you to remember before we go into questions, where I'll be taking your questions for the next 20, 30 minutes or so, maybe not that long, 20 minutes, is that some of you are aware that if you bought the book, I sent you my phone number so that we could have a text relationship. And I know many of you think I'm crazy, and it is true that my inbox looks like a pile of hangers. It's just crazy. So many of you in there in my text, but it's worth it to me. I love having individual conversations, and I can also do group texts. So I'm going to give you my phone number right now and invite you to text. Now it's a app that we've set up such that if you text me, I think you have to text this number a message, and then you might get an auto reply. I don't remember what the actual sign up is, but then it's just exactly. I'll show you what it looks like right here. There you go. Boom. And just looks exactly like the texting app. And you'll see there's lots of people in here. Seeing some messages come in right this minute. Somebody's got a birthday today. Who's got that birthday? I don't want to go into that anyway. I'm going to invite you to text me. Are you ready? 206 309 5177. One more time, 206 309 5177. That is a support group for doing what you want to be doing in this class. Okay. So I'd invite you to text me. You may get an automated text that says you're into it, but then it's actually me. Tick, 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 tick. So knowing that there are a lot of folks in there, be patient, but I see everything and I will respond in the best way that I can. So another piece of housekeeping before we shift into questions is, and I'm really happy for those of you that stuck around to this part of the broadcast where I could share my phone number. So a lot of this is this weekly Saturday gathering, 30 to 60 minutes, but it's also, I'm going to be doing some cool challenges as a part of this process, and I'm going to be doing that on my Insta. So I want you to turn notifications on Instagram, or if you're not following me there, I'm just at Chase Jarvis. I'm guessing most of you are following me there, of the couple thousand people that are enrolled here. But turn notifications on because I'm going to do challenges, I think Tuesdays and Fridays. And it's going to be valuable to this process. And then we're going to talk about this stuff on Saturday, as well as go over the reading. Lastly, invite friends. It's not too late to join this. It's my hope that you can step in at any point in this process, and there'll be enough recap and this support group here combined with the book. Of course, they'll need to do the reading for past chapters, things we've already covered. But if you find value in this, there's no shame. There's actually a great opportunity for human connection, for kindness, for just for vulnerability in inviting your friends, saying, I'm doing this class. And I just, again, it's free. We at Creative Live have spent our life building this and thinking about it. And so I want as many people to experience as possible. And then, one ask. This is an ask that I don't want it to understand. I don't want you to understand that it's self-serving. I think in the same way that getting as many people to understand this material as possible. I mean, I wrote this because this is the process that I went through for unlocking my potential in my life. And just so happens that when I deconstructed the lives of my friends who were the most successful in so many disciplines, they had the same experience. That's why I wrote the book. But so as not to be self-serving and to frame it as such, my hope is that you can write a review on Amazon if you've read the book. I'm learning from my publisher and agent that that's a really important place. And we've got, I don't know, a few hundred 5-star reviews, but I would love to have at the end of this process 500 to 1,000. It would be amazing. Let's target 1,000. So if you've read the book and haven't left a review, it would mean the world to me. And I read every single one of them. And that's how we can help spread this word. Apparently that really helps the algorithm for search and whatnot when people type in creativity. I want to thank you all for making the book #1 this week in a couple different categories. I think in creativity and in culture and workplace. That's because of you. And that's exactly what I mean when I'm asking for your contribution and support. Okay, so here we are at the Q&A part of the program, and it's my goal. I promised we'd go 30 to 60 minutes. We're at 58 minutes. So if you want to bounce now, it's fine. I'm not going to hold that against you. But I do find that the questions that people ask are really, really insightful, and that there's really key buckets of questions that if someone, again, in New Jersey asks that you in South Africa may have the same question. So, apparently my camera exposure just went off. Is that happening? I'm getting a note from someone. I will try and, where's my Skype feed? Oh, look at that. It's getting bright because it's getting brighter out here. It was a gnarly thunderstorm. How's that? Oh yeah. Oof. There we go. Coming back into, there we go. Actual skin. Sorry about that. We had a crazy, it was almost jet black sky, big thunder showers before we started here. So that's why it was blown out. So questions. Now, Isabella is writing in from Instagram. Do we have to choose Again, I love drawing and painting and making decoupage. And do I really have to narrow down? To be crystal clear, you do not have to narrow down if you are unsure what it is you want to do. You should be in an experimentation phase. You should be trying, tasting lots of different things of life if you're unsure of what it is that you want to do. Sampling and tasting and experimenting, that is in fact the only way you understand what lights you up. But if you want to be world class at something, you want to make your living in life doing that thing, you need to commit. And it doesn't mean turn everything out. Like, as an example, I am a photographer, I am an entrepreneur. We're all many things. I think many of you know me as a photographer. Many of you know me as an entrepreneur because of building Best Camera app and Creative Live, where tens of millions of things that tens of millions of people use. Ask me if I do other things. I'm in the middle of remodeling a little beach cabin that we have with my own bare hands, and it feels so good. That's what I'm doing between the hours of 7 and midnight and 6 a.m. and 8 a.m. So that's not to say I can't do that, because I'm focused on being an entrepreneur and building Creative Live into the best thing it can be, and honing my skills as a creator. But I doubled down and tripled down. I've spent tens of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of hours around photography and entrepreneurship. So that is part of what really unlocks my ability to do lots of things. And again, I'm revisiting Isabella's question because it's a lot like Gen 1 again's question, is like commitment. If you are unsure, you should be tasting lots of things. If you want to be world class, you have to commit. You have to commit attention. You have to commit time. You have to commit effort. Okay. On Facebook, Ray Mongelli says, where does talent fit into the equation? Talent is an interesting point, and certainly we have aptitude for various different things, whether we learn that very, very, very young, whether genetically or otherwise, we had a predisposition. I want to hearken, I've mentioned it a couple times, it's really fresh in my mind, the work of Angela Duckworth. She has studied from a psychology perspective the role of talent, and she first became aware of this in as a math teacher. I think she was teaching 7th grade or something like that, a middle school math teacher, or maybe high school sophomore. And early on, there was people that she identified that had high aptitude for math, and then there are people that she was worried about. And she was quite sure that the people who had high aptitude were going to do the best at the end of the school year, and the people who didn't have high aptitude were going to do the worst. And nothing could be further from the truth. Yes, it's true that some people who did have high aptitude were great, and some people who did not have aptitude in her assessment certainly did not do well. But she was most surprised by how wrong she was, and the role that effort played and focus played relative to natural gifts. So that's science. And if you're curious, again, what I'm referencing, the book is Grit from Angela Duckworth. You can read a lot about her online too. Lots of great videos. And you should definitely watch on Creative Live TV my conversation with her yesterday. Super insightful on the topic. So talent plays a role. But I have met so many people, and just think of what a cliche it is that he, she, or they had so much talent, but didn't really end up making it. That is like the common story, right? What we really need to focus on and celebrate is someone deciding what it is they want to do with this one precious life and going after it. Because the people that you are celebrating right now in your mind, in your heart, in your world, they worked their asses off, and it was available to them to do so. Now, it's fair to acknowledge that we are in a place of privilege. All of us have relative privilege, even just the fact that we're tuned into this broadcast. And there are, a billion people without access to the internet. There's a billion people who don't have access to clean drinking water. And we should dedicate time and resources into fixing, say, both those problems. And there's a thousand others. But right now, you're here, you're tuned into this thing, and I'm guessing that if you are able to watch this broadcast, that you have much more control over your outcomes and who you want to be, what you want to become, than you think. And Sure, there's probably a gap between where you are and where you want to be, and that might be 10,000 hours away. And so for so many people, that's frustrating. I want to give you a different lens on it. And it's that you might be 10,000 hours away, but you're only one decision, and that is the decision to try. That's the decision to try. And it does not have very much to do with talent. It has way more to do. The science is super clear that it's effort, application of effort, and perseverance over time, right? Application of a ton of effort in one weekend and not becoming the musician that Lady Gaga is lunacy, right? It's crazy making to think that you're going to, that your piano skills are going to be as good as hers, or your singing skills or songwriting skills or whatever in a weekend when she's been doing it for 25 years. And we often compare ourselves to those people. It's the wrong thing. Application of effort over time. All right. Good question there, Ray. Thank you for tuning in. My mother-in-law Linda just chimed in and said, hey, there's a lot of pages and blank spaces in the book, which are great to journal in. So you don't have to actually go buy a journal. My mother-in-law Linda is right. There's a lot of space in the book for making notes. So no need to buy your special journal. I'm going to let's go to YouTube for just a second. Thank you, Chris, for buying the book. Appreciate it. Brandon, aloha from Cleveland, Ohio. Just rewatched your Creative Live for the book and ready to start the book. I'm sick and tired of working at a construction job, ready to become an artist. Love that. I want you to remind you that we are all artists, right? And the canvas is our life. That is the definition of creativity that we need to engage with, not creativity, small c, with popsicle sticks and pipe cleaners and glitter, although any form of art is fantastic. And just remember, though, those three key principles. You're a creator, creativity is a muscle, and it's through creating in small ways that you realize that you can create the life you want. Terry Pruitt wants to know, when designing your system, how do you do that if you have a tendency to need external accountability? And then she asks, how do you find the internal accountability? Well, I'm here to say that this is the reason we're doing this thing, and this is the reason that it's 6 weeks. If you show up every week for 6 weeks, I guarantee you're going to be further along than if you hadn't. So make the commitment right now to show up every Saturday for 6 weeks, and think about that as making a promise to yourself and then keeping that promise. That's one of the reasons I make my bed every day. That's one of the reasons that I do not think about whether I want to get in the cold water. You guys know I'm a cold plunger. I don't think about it every day. I just do it. I just get in the cold plunge at my house or here at the beach, the cold, icy, freezing cold water. Or if I'm on the road, I take a cold shower. I don't think about it. I've just made the commitment. I know it's a healthy thing for me. I know how it makes me feel, and I just do it. This is about making a habit, and a habit, even the habit of internal accountability, can be developed. Also, there are thousands of people in this broadcast, and these people are like you. So reach out to some of these people, go to Facebook and YouTube and message some of these people and see if you can create an accountability framework, accountability buddy with someone else who's in there. So, throw your name down here if you want to, be a part of this community where you can, you're willing to create partners just on your own. I'm not going to facilitate this stuff. So, again, don't worry about what it looks like on the outside, or that this might mean you're weak, or this is, we're all in this together. This is why we're doing this thing, is to a community of creators. So Terry, look for somebody in this broadcast to who's willing to be your accountability buddy. External accountability is nothing wrong with that. And if you can't find someone in this broadcast, if you search accountability buddy app, there are all kinds of platforms where you say what you're going to do, and then you've got an accountability buddy as a part of the app who'll just check in on you. So that's a great question, Terry. Thank you so much for asking. Okay, the questions are moving a little too fast here. Brandon Brain's attention. Josh asks, when I start focusing on my work, I feel like it's better to block out social media and avoid comparing to others. At the same time, I feel like I'm ignoring my community. Aha. This is something we're going to get to in the book, specifically around making time and space for productivity. Now, this as a concept isn't a productivity concept, but the act of being productive is very valuable towards pursuing your creative calling. What I find, and again, I'll support this with science from Angela Duckworth, that 100% focus, or as close to 100% focus in whatever time chunk you can allocate, is a common thread between the world's highest performers. It's wicked focus on whatever it is that you can do. So I like to time box things, and I think social media is something that we've all struggled with as a way, like, especially when someone says, oh, I'm a photographer, therefore I need to spend 5 hours a day on Instagram. Not true. You need to spend 20 minutes a day on Instagram. And you need to start by posting something, not by scrolling. Create before you consume. And then you're free. Once you've created something and shared it with the world, let that be your license for taking in the work of others as inspiration. See what your peers are doing that's valuable, but time box it, and do not let this idea of building community get in the way of you defining what it is that you want, working on the skills that are necessary to get you there. This is a huge mistake. So I'm very, I would say, loud on the topic of building community. What I find, though, is that people misattribute building community for procrastination. So I do think it's a huge role, and we'll talk about it, in week 5, part 4 of the book, Amplify, about how we build community. So stay tuned. But just for now, I want you to know that you should time box that, and it should not get in the way of all the other things. The making, the doing, the progress towards these goals that you have is way more important at this time than if it's an either or. Now, of course, what you're doing right now is building community, tuning in and asking a question. So I applaud and support you. I just want to make sure that you're not substituting working on your craft for Instagram, which is what most people do. All right. Okay, this is interesting. Aman Batra says, I think I've repressed my creativity so much that nothing seems exciting anymore. I'm still looking for what will spark joy. Totally understandable. Here's the first thing I like to do. I like to look in my past. I like to recommend that others look in their past and what used to bring them joy. And was it a person, a group of people? Was it a mentality? What was the environment like? And when you think about those things, maybe it's nostalgia, or maybe it's a longing for actually doing that thing. Now, a lot of people ask me that with photography. I'll use my own hard-hitting real-life example. I have achieved every goal that I had in photography and so many more. And so as I look back on the just absolute fondness of my photography, do I still identify as a photographer? Absolutely. I take photographs every single day. My phone has right now, let's look at this for a second. My photos, how many? 49,707, 49,811. And that little gap in my reading, it was because it was updated from yesterday. So I took approximately 100 photographs yesterday. So I still identify as a photographer, and I look back and I'm like, but it doesn't bring me the same joy that it did. When I think about what we're doing right now, the thousands of people are going to be unlocked and be able to achieve their dreams because of a program that yours truly and the people at Creative Live are putting on right now in order to help you. That totally fires me up. That doesn't mean I'm not good at photography. I've been world class for decades. That doesn't mean that I don't have an interest in working on this, again, the remodel that I'm doing right now with my bare hands in my off hours. Passionate about that. I want to then look back, like, when did I get all this joy? What sparked me? What lit me up? And if I don't know where to start, that's a great place. Also, if you missed earlier in the broadcast, asking other people what you're great at, and they will tell you. Not just external validation, but just that other person that you know and trust might have some good ideas. So this is going to be a huge topic for next week for imagination, imagining what's possible, and not as defined by your parents, your friends, your spouse, your peers, your partners, your career counselor, as defined by you. This idea that you are driving is super critical. Let's see. On Facebook, who's this? This is Anise. I don't know how to choose what I should be doing. I'm an art director, but my passion is photography. I don't make enough money with photography, so I'm always going back to art direction to pay my bills. How can I end the cycle? Okay, many of you who are subscribed to my YouTube channel have seen this episode of the Daily Creative. I've taken a couple questions there, and I'm going to probably use a few too many words to describe this, but I'll try and do it in as few as possible. And it is this idea of how to transition from one thing to another in career is very valuable. There's a mentality that says burn the boats. You burn the boats, you have to figure it out. Don't make another dollar as an art director, and you're going to figure out how to become a photographer. At some point, I do advocate that leap because there's a desire to hang on at the end. However, I'm not a person that wants to start there because of so much of social conditioning. There's a bunch of other stuff I don't feel like we have time to cover right now. But what I encourage people to do is you have to draw a line in the sand with respect to how you position yourself. And starting to position yourself as a photographer is really important. And if I go to your website, Anise, I want you to have a photography website. This is your website. I do not want you to say, you can hire me for an art director, as a photographer, as a designer, or as a plumber, or as a hairstylist. Or you see, like, when I look at a website of someone who does everything, it's sort of like showing up at a restaurant that serves tacos and pizza and stir-fry noodles. You're like, I'm not quite sure that's where I want to get my food from. And in the same way, I don't think that clients like to hire that. So I want you to take, and if a job comes in as an art direction, absolutely make as much money as you can and constrain the amount of time that you spend doing that, and that you spend marketing that and positioning that, and spend as much time calling yourself a photographer, building your website, your portfolio, your client list as you can. That's not to say that you won't make money if someone asks you to art direct a job. Just try and constrain the amount of time and effort. That is the number one thing that will get you better and more well-known and get your business off the ground. Time and commitment to the new thing. So again, I'm not saying if someone calls and says, I want to give you 10 grand to do this art direction job, you don't say, buzz off, dude, I'm not doing that anymore. You say, okay, because I know that's money I can put in the bank. I can do that in a small amount of time with little effort because I'm world-class at that thing. But I really want to spend as much time as I can marketing, promoting, honing my skills, dialing in my craft, and landing clients in the new world. And think about how you landed clients as an art director. There's probably some liftable and stampable ways that you can generate clients in the photography world as well. I want you to apply those. And if you search my name in that topic in YouTube, you'll get about a 10 or 20-minute video that I made with as a part of my daily creative series that you can get more on it. But Anise, I hope that helps. Again, so many people. We're gonna go for just another, let's say, 10 minutes here. You get your work through recruiters. She says, that's fine, great. Don't tell them that you're not an art director anymore, but spend as much time as you can taking pictures. When the art direction jobs come in, do them, but spend every other waking moment focused on the thing that you want to do. You're welcome, Anise. She's shouting out a thank you. This is interesting. Jamie says, I'm an addict in long-term recovery. You love understanding, focusing on mental health, addiction, trauma, the pathology and the biology behind it. How can you use your creative skills to build a tribe in this area? Well, I do not know, Jamie, what your area of expertise is. If it is in the area of trauma and you want to help others, I think it's a fantastic way to you need to develop a craft around talking about it, educating it, whether that's the written word or others. I will use an example of a friend of mine, Mary Angela Abeo. She lost her brother to suicide, and so one of the things that she did is started I talk about this in the book, and you can see it on Instagram. She started an Instagram handle and an art project called Faces of Fortitude, where she started through photographing people who were the survivors, were in a relationship or close to others who had committed suicide. She captured their visually and their stories and shared it on Instagram. So she's increasing the dialogue, the awareness of suicide, and doing so in an area where she's an expert as a photographer. And just so you know, if you ask her if she was here standing next to me, she would say, I was not an expert in photography prior to starting this. She used the Creative Life Studios on the weekends, and because she worked at Creative Life for a long time before she moved on to do this to this project, and that was a way into the area that she wanted to work on, right? And she didn't. It was a combination of photography and writing, and it was in an area of passion. I talk about this a lot in Creative Calling in the Amplify section in building communities. If you haven't read the book, again, it's $2.99 right now on Amazon if you're in the US. We talk about the different types of communities, and you can be a joiner, you can be along for the ride for someone else for a while before you actually start building your own framework. But it's through participating in these things that you'll actually start to uncover what it is that you want to do, through experimenting and participating. And so I invite you to, again, go to the 4th section of the book. Be sure to be a part of this 6-week series that we're in here. Check out Faces of Fortitude and look at ways that you might be able to intertwine the passion that you have for mental health and recovering from addiction around your creative expression, whether it's a business, an art project. There's so many ways to slice and dice your passion. I want you to come along for the ride, read section 4 of the book for sure, and check out these resources that I've just shared. Awesome. Let's see, I'm getting some notes from my team here. Grady started a subreddit for anyone who wants to connect in around this forum. Thanks, Grady Lawler. Really appreciate you. For anyone who's a Redditor, speaking of getting unstuck and community, I created a fresh subreddit community for all of us to connect, to get unstuck, and keep each other accountable as creatives. Let's make this happen, family. Go here to Creative Calling. Here, I'll just, let's see. If actually, why don't you, Nasi, you want to paste that in the comments in as many different places as you can, that subreddit. Thanks, Grady, for starting that. Really, really awesome. I appreciate you. That's just another example, right? This is why you showed up today. It's not just to hear from me. It's to realize, A, that you're not alone. B, that there's so many other people that you can be your support. And when we are all in this together, again, rising tide floats all the boats. And I want to draw special attention to the fact that it is a tough time right now, right? And many of us, myself included, need connection now more than ever. That's certainly one of the reasons that I wanted to do something to have an effect on the struggles that people are happening amidst the pandemic. Now, my belief is this works in a pandemic or out of a pandemic, but it was something that I decided that me and the Creative Life team could do in order to add value. Check out that subreddit. Thanks, Grady. Just love seeing all your notes from Facebook and YouTube and the creativelive.com/TV page. Josh and Aman and Grady and Rob and Nojan and Terry and Jagota and Camera View and BB. Sorry, it's going so fast I almost can't read it. But E.L. Brunkart says, I'm a photographer. This is my first challenge to say it. Always learning to approve. Many of you know this story, but some of you don't. I made up business cards for myself long before I'd ever made $1 as a photographer, and it said Chase Jarvis photographer on it. And I made that card mostly to help myself swallow the idea of calling myself a photographer. I printed it, I put it on paper, I carried it around for months before I showed it to anybody. And so I want to say congratulations on EL Brunkart for calling yourself a photographer. That's a first challenge that you've overcome. I love seeing it. Soma said she didn't see the subreddit info. Maybe someone on the team here, Nasa, if you could post that in, or maybe Kate, Dessa, you can post that in the Facebook. That's where some of these folks, like Soma, for example, some folks are posting on Twitter. Thank you very much. All right, another comment here. I'm going to go for 5 more minutes. We're going to wrap up at 11:30. So TB Ostrowski says COVID-19 and isolation has proven to grow. You've proven growth with your creator pass. It's educational and inspiring. I fully recommend it. Thank you. I thought you were going to have a question rather than a comment. I hope that didn't seem too self-serving, but for what it's worth, we are doing a ton at Creative Live, and the Creator Pass, I think it's right now $149. Maybe it's $249, but I think it's $149 for access to 2,000 classes, y'all. Like, serious business. So, and if you don't have that much, you can afford $2.99. The ebook is on sale there, and again, that's primarily U.S. For those of you who are international. It was just hard to work with international retailers on adjusting the price. A publisher only has so much impact. Those are their own subsidiaries, so it was a little bit harder. Let's see, a couple more questions here in the 4 minutes we have left. Trenda wants to know, what if you're an introvert and not comfortable talking about yourself? The future favors the introverts. Don't worry about it. That's not to say that you don't have to develop a skill of communicating about your work, because the number of people who believe that the work should stand for itself is far too many. And the reality is, you can ask anyone who's created success for themselves that they had to learn how to talk about their work. This idea of just putting it out there and letting it do its thing is just fiction. And you can ask, extroverted creators, introverted creators, many of the world's top, who fall in both camps, and they all agree that you have to actually invoke community. That's what chapter or section 4 of this is going to be 4 weeks from now, rather. But I want you to rest assured that it's a skill that you can develop. And the only way you develop it is through practicing. That's one of the reasons I love sharing the work so much, not just creating it. But if you can create a habit of sharing, of creating and sharing, that's one of the ways that you learn how the market sees your work, learn how community sees your work, place for feedback and constructive conversation. And it's the act of talking about your work, both as receiving feedback and about sharing what your vision is, that you develop it. So community is key. Practice is the answer that most people don't like to hear. Starts with sharing, and this community is going to be really good for you. It's still $2.99 Canadian. TB Ostrowski says that's cool. Grady Lawler says the Creative Pass is insanely worth it. Thank you. Magritte Heistad Carter, I may have pronounced that wrong, sorry. In order to make a living, I need to sell 3 paintings a month. How do I start really believing that this is possible? Ooh, I love this one. If you don't believe in you, who will? Now, I understand that we've all got all kinds of baggage. We've got trauma. We've got the stories that we tell ourselves. That's one of the reasons that I think this book, this community, this class, and Creative Live are totally helpful for reprogramming your brain. You have some default neural networks going on that you're telling yourself a story, and you even admitted it. Like, how do I start really believing it's true? And I just respond, if you don't believe in you, who will? Okay. This is a mindset. It's an opportunity to cultivate your mindset. I cover a lot of mindset in the book. We're going to cover a lot of the mindset conversations in this course. It does have to do with rewiring it, with creating positive messages for yourself, with vision boards and stories, retelling ourselves stories that have hurt us in the past into making them into new stories that support the vision that we have for this one precious life. Community is also super key. If you're around toxic people, people who don't share that vision that you have for yourself, you need to find some new friends. It's that simple. And if you can't talk to someone about how you see yourself or how you want to see yourself, then there's nothing wrong with some therapy. There's nothing wrong with practicing. And in everything, the first time you started to walk, you fell down. The first time you played the piano, it sucked. The first draft you wrote of your poem or your book or your essay sucked. So don't expect this to be easy, but I have to tell you, it's worth the journey. It's the most important thing. Mindset is so foundational to everything that we do, whether you're a creator, an entrepreneur, you don't identify it, you do. If you are here to architect this one precious life, then it starts with mindset. And come along on this journey with us. We're here for you and with you. Max wants to know, why does the future favor introverts? I just think there's a lot of I like underdogs, and I think underdogs, and in this case, we've had an extroverted culture for so long that introverts are often overlooked, and so there's a little bit of an opportunity to catch people flat-footed. And when I say the future favors the introverts, I think that's it used to be about glad handing and it's all who you know, and now gatekeepers are largely removed. And so in a world where historically gatekeepers favored extroverts because it was a largely physical and gate-kept world, there were gallerists deciding who hung on the gallery walls and editors deciding who got in the magazines and the papers. And since those are largely gone now, or since the barriers are lowered, it opens up a new playing field. And so that's why I think the future has an opportunity for the introverts that is unlike any before it. So, all right, y'all. Jamie and Marcella and Anise and Linda and Chase, not me, Chase, different Chase. TB and Rob and Max and Jamie, Tony. I want to say thank you so much for joining. This is going to conclude today's broadcast. Again, I'm going to revisit the things that I asked just really quickly. Prepare for next week's read by reading the first step of the 3 steps under the idea framework, everything under imaginations at chapter 1, 2, and 3. 2, I'm inviting you to text me, become a member of the community that I can text with. In order to do that, text 206-309-5177. That's it. I think you may get an automated message back, but then it's just going to be you and I texting. I would invite you to use that as a support group for what it is that we're doing here together. Turn on notifications for Insta because we're going to be doing some channels there, or challenges. That's easy. Hit the 3 dots. Turn on notifications for my stories and my posts. Invite some friends. And lastly, if you're willing to take 2 minutes, if any of this or anything I've done for you is valuable and you're willing to go to Amazon and write a review, it would be most gracious, because it's one of the ways that we're learning that the algorithm will surface Creative Calling and help it stay in the #1 slot, as you all made it #1 in a couple different categories this week, which warms my heart. So if you got any value, this is free. Maybe that's a thing that I could ask of you. All right, then. Signing off. So excited about this group, this platform, this community. If you have any questions, hit me up via text. And signing off for now. I'll see you next Saturday, 10 a.m. to discuss the imagination. Can't wait to see you again soon. Signing off. If you're feeling isolated and looking for creative connection, try tuning into creativelive.com/TV. That's where we've got a 24/7 live stream from the kitchen counters.
I can do that backlit shot that I really like to do.
From the studios and living rooms of many of the world's top creators, where we're doing musical performances, Q&As, cooking shows, virtual book tour events, drawing, spoken word poetry, and more.
Life passed me by waiting for an invitation when the world is greater than my nation or my occupation. Be someone you've never been. You feel all that adrenaline, it's medicine.
It actually helps me feel like my days are more purposeful.
I hope that out of this deep pain will come some collective growth.
Dive into Creative Live TV today. Hey guys, what's up? It's Chase Jarvis, founder and CEO of Creative Live. You all know that we have more than 2,000 classes and more than 10,000 hours of learning, inspirational, and motivational content on the platform. I'm super excited to announce a new experience on Creative Live. It's called Fast Class. You've told us that you're busy and sometimes it's hard to dive into a full class from start to finish. So essentially, we're now giving you a shortened highlight version of our top Creative Live classes. You can always dive into the full class with 5, 10, or 15 hours of great content. But now, if you're just looking to focus on a few of the highlights or want to be able to skip quickly to something that really interests you, you can now get a shortened fast class version of that class. We're also thinking this might be able to help you explore a new craft and save time while doing it. This is a great tool to curate your learning experience to help create the life that you seek. So you're probably thinking, great, how do I access this new experience on Creative Live? That's easy. All you have to do is be a subscriber to the Creator Pass, and then all this is yours.